Can you introduce yourself for us?
I am Niga Salam Latif, Kurdish artist, curator,
Adventurer.
and a liver. I try to live.
And you're in the MA with us, but you have a lot of previous curatorial experience, right? How long have you been doing it for?
In years, I really don't know, but I've been working since. I've started my journey since I was 17, starting from photojournalism and then studying art, and then from doing photography to art projects, and always being a part of the exhibitions that was happening in the places that I was working on. But then after finishing my undergrads, I focused more on curation, so I think I've been doing curation since 2019, more focused.
And you were telling us that you've been creating since you were really little too.
That is true. That started with my mom, because I'm the youngest of my siblings, and all my siblings, they were all grown up and they were in school, so all my time spent at home with my mom was actually creating things. Since I was 5. I think I was 5 when my mom first gave me the first needle.
Oh, so sweet. And we have the great joy to have one of your pieces. You made that when you were a bit older, is that right? When did you make it?
So this piece displayed in the exhibition, it's a artwork, or it's a piece that I made with my mom. It was in 2020 that we started making it.
Was that during COVID?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I always had a lot of, even though everything that I did through creativity, it came from my parents, but like I always had huge issue with my mom and my dad also, but mainly my mom, because I spent most of my time with her. She was really not supportive of me approaching art, and this piece was a way for me to get the answer of all the questions that I always had.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's sort of like a piece of like okay.
Pretty much.
Maybe I like that. So you've obviously been doing it for a really long time, and you got into it sort of through your mum. What does it mean to you? So sort of craft and art, they're kind of interchangeable, which is what our exhibition is looking at. But what does it mean to you, the word craft, and sort of when you think about it?
I think for a really long time, especially when I was studying art, like I sort of looked at craft at a lower place than art.
Yeah.
But then the more I got, especially doing this piece with my mom, I learned more how important the craft is, and how, like, because like my understanding first for craft, it was like something that you were like skilled and there is not much emotions into it or much story. But like after doing this work, or during the research of doing this work with my mom, I think it completely changed my perspective towards that, because I think craft has been like a very, very important part of like my mom and my grandma and all the women in my life that didn't have the chance to have access to different places outside of home. And craft was that functional piece that was also somewhere to express emotions, anger, all the other emotions that women had to go through, and also a very important place to record a history that nobody else had dared to put it outside.
So would you say it's something that brought together a lot of communities? Because I know that you've told me that sort of gossiping and crafting go hand in hand with, I guess, your family, but also people at home as well, just sort of wider. Do you say that's like a community pillar?
Definitely. I mean, from my mom, I mean, in the sound piece with the with work, you could hear my mom because I'm discussing with her like how did this happen, especially in my when my mom was younger, like it was something to discuss, it was something to bond, because both because of the political situation of that time, that it was not safe to go out, to go study and whatever, but like going to your neighbor's house to show like how far you have knitted your sweater, and them showing you what they have done. It was a place to get together and to talk. Sometimes it was only about the sweater that you were stitching, but most of the time was about much more than that. So yeah, definitely it's a very important bringing together.
Like that's something that I witnessed as well. I spoke to my mum the other day, and she told me about how she would go on scrapbooking retreats, which is the most American thing ever. But you spend all this quality time with these people, and you become really close, and then you start gossiping with them, and there are really beautiful friendships and relationships that sort of bloom out of those conversations, especially when they're sort of about bigger issues, which I think is really nice.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's important for, I would say your craft, but you sort of are a master of all trades, but just craft in general, I guess, to continue through to the younger generations?
I think definitely. I mean, I can talk about my own experience. I think it was that one safe place for me to connect with my mom, because we always had a lot of issues, like political, religious issues between us, but like crafting was that one safe space that we could communicate through. I could learn from my mom. I actually learned so much from the time that we were crafting, that we were discussing. The most important thing that we were able to discuss making this work was at the end of the interview / work we did. I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, do you think this is art that you're doing? And she told me, if this is not art, what is? And that sentence, it might sound simple, but like it was something that changed my whole perspective. So I think it's a very important connection tool to learn from your ancestor in a history that travels not by words, but by movements, by how you deal with materials, and also the wisdom of dealing with materials, how you care for material. Because I think in this era of this time of like consumerism and the abuse of material, I think we no longer use materials, we abuse them.
Yes.
But through that learning connection, through crafting, you kind of learn how to actually use material. So yeah, definitely.
I agree. I think a lot of people have said that AI is sort of getting handmade things off track, but to be honest, I kind of disagree. I don't think that technological systems can replace things that are handmade because of the amount of like personal connection they have within them. And like you said, handling the materials, it means nothing if it's been done by a machine, but if it's been done by like family members who are teaching other members to sew, it's just so much better. This is probably a silly question because I know that you do, but do you use your craft to support other people in communities?
Definitely. I think it's a part of it. I mean, you can't be somebody who's crafting, who's handling material, and not think of others, because I think the core of crafting is that togetherness, and togetherness does not happen if you don't care for other people. So definitely, I mean, if it's in the sharing story, if it's like the materiality of helping out, if it's like making grounds for youth artists, it's a major part of my practice completely.
You have, if I can say, just like the most beautiful, amazing practice in the world. I don't think I've ever met someone who's just generally amazing as you. It's just wonderful. I'm going to go back to what your mum said about, if this isn't art, then what is? Do you think then that your mum would consider herself an artist?
It was something, so I'll give you a little backstory. So when I grew up, I'm the youngest of my family, and I always felt like an outsider. I was like, why am I into art? Why am I the only one who wants to be an artist when there is no artist in the family?
Yeah.
I felt very alienated because my education, my understanding of art was coming from somewhere else. It was coming from a Western perspective. And when I grew up, and that's how this work actually came to be, and rethinking and relearning, seeing how my mom and my dad were dealing with material, with stories, they were doing things. Like one of the things, this will connect to the previous question that you asked, like how it brings community together. Like when my dad was running from the military and he had to live in, like, seek hiding spaces in different villages, or like when he was teaching in different villages, my mom's craft was one way for her to connect with the other women in the village. Like she always tells me, like, I would make this big frame of making a carpet, and all the women in the village would come and we would sit together. I would show them how to make it, and we would connect. So I think it was like a very important realization when I learned, like, all the practice that I have, all the things that I learned in the university, how art can be connected to audience, how your art can be active and not passive. Yeah. And I go home and I listen to my mom just does it effortlessly. Because what she does comes exactly from the community, from like the lived experience. So yeah, I think I changed my perceiving knowledge direction from educational system or whatever to my mom, because it was coming from the very much lived experience. She never considered herself as an artist, but I think she's my favorite artist because she doesn't name it, she just does it. And I think it connects to most of women in the history. Women have always done the work without saying anything, without that egoistic, centric, having the signature, the name. It was just everywhere. Yeah. You see your grandma's craft on the head of your knees, in a dress that a neighbor is wearing, on the sheets, on the cover, on the curtains, everywhere, without ever caring who made it.
I don't think I could say that better. That's the whole point of our exhibition. It's just really wonderfully put. You would consider yourself an artist, right?
I would. I would. Because to me, art means asking a question and curiosity. So I would call myself an artist. I also dare to call my mom an artist too.
Yes, no, she definitely is. I mean, the piece that you have is amazing, and the story behind it is just further proof that it is a piece of art, because it has that intent behind it and the story, and just sort of wonderful memories of you and your mom. It's beautiful. I don't know if I have any more questions. Oh, can you tell us your favourite craft-related memory, if you have one? If you don't, it's okay.
Oh, I have many. I don't know.
By all means, go ahead.
I think that one very core memory that is also a part of the sound piece with fabric is when I was very young. I think I was 5. My mom was, because I come from when I was younger, my family was very poor, which made us to make everything ourselves. And by ourselves, I mean my mom mainly. So I remember we were at home alone. My siblings, they were all in school. And she was making pillowcases. Bought some fabric, made the pillowcases, and she was stitching this really beautiful pattern of flowers and birds on it. And I was there bored, so she just gave me the needle and showed me how to do it, which is the same pattern that we tried to replicate on the tablecloth. And it's very political for me, because when I grew older, I really was into drawing and painting, and it was very difficult for me to do, because my mom kept telling me you shouldn't draw animals, because from her Islamic background, it was like, if you like make any animals, anything that has consciousness, it will become the torturers of you on the afterlife.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna paint, if you're gonna do art, just do flowers and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that connected to me the first thing when we were making the birds together. That's why I was trying to remake these birds. And in the sound piece, you can hear that. And the poem that I'm saying, like, the birds that my mom stitches, that I stitch, is becoming the torturers of me on my afterlife. So it was such a, it's a very important memory, but like very, whenever I think of it, like it contextualizes my understanding for art, for history, and for my personal experience too.
Would you say that pattern is like, you know how some people have a family crest, that's your family pattern because it's been done? That's so sweet.
I think so.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I don't have any more questions. If you have any more memories that you'd like to share, that's all good. But if you can't think of any other ones, that's okay.
I think maybe not memory, just one more thing about this work. This work for me was telling history or explaining art through two different perspectives. My mom's perspective and mine overlapping or like being stitched together. So I think, I mean, if you listen to the sound piece in that sense, I think it gives a really important context of how we deal with history and how we embody that history.
And did you sort of do half and half each, or did you just kind of do the same bits together?
No, like, it was done like how we used to do when I was younger. So maybe I was like making the needles ready, and she would start, and I would do one leaf, and she would tell me, oh no, don't do that way, do it this way. So it was like reliving the childhood memory that I had with my mom.
Did you get annoyed as a child that you were told that you shouldn't do things a certain way?
I was not annoyed. I was just very curious. And gladly both my parents, but especially my mom, they wouldn't say like, oh, this can't be done this way, especially when it comes to craft.
Yeah.
They would like look at me to see if the pattern that I have figured out is actually functional or not, and then they would guide me. But I would get really annoyed when I would do something. They were like, stop making noise, it's nap time or whatever. But then my mom, the artist that she is, like, she would get angry, but later on comes like, okay, bring it, let's do it together. Yeah.
It's okay to interrupt nap time if it's for creative things.
Yeah.
Okay, I think those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, how long have you been weaving and knitting for?
Knitting, my grandmother taught me when I was about 8, so 57 years. Weaving I started about 10 years ago. I joined a guild and learned through that.
And you've been addicted ever since?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
My name is Mandy and I'm a fibreholic.
Do you go to like Fibreholics Anonymous?
No, there isn't one yet.
Yeah, there's still time.
Yeah.
So when you go to your weaving guild, is it really nice to have that sense of community?
It was, but I haven't settled in the Exeter one very well, so I'm not going there at the moment. But I've started going regularly to a monthly meet at Make in Bovey, which is called Weave Wednesdays, but there aren't many weavers there, but that is much more suited to my personality.
So, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from? And
Okay. So I was born in Suffolk, nearly 65. I was always knitting and crocheting as a child. I went off to university in Bristol in 79 and carried on the knitting passion then, and for a bit of pocket money I used to knit for friends, used to do silly jumpers and things like that. And then once I became a doctor, time was much shorter, but I always found time to do a bit. And I was notorious on call for having my knitting in the coffee room, waiting for things to happen. And then a few years before I retired, I learned to spin and joined the Cheshire Guild of Spinners, Weavers and Dyers, and then fell down the rabbit hole of weaving, and I've been utterly addicted ever since.
So I don't know if this is a sacrilegious question, but do you have a favourite fibre craft?
I think it is weaving now. I would have always said knitting, but I find now that my hands get tired if I knit a lot, so weaving I can do for hours, but I'm not allowed to because of the dogs. But if I was left to my own devices, I would spend more hours doing it.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you do with the guide dogs?
Yeah, I've been a puppy raiser for guide dogs for about 4 years now. We lost our own pet dogs, but we thought we might travel, and somebody suggested that raising guide dog puppies would give us the flexibility to travel but still have a lovely dog about the place. But the first dog we got was a bit out of control when he arrived at 9 months old, so we adopted him, and so we got pet dog after all. But I've had, I'm on my 5th pup, 4th one went into training today. And so far I've had 1 guide dog, 1 naughty dog and 1 injured dog, so that's okay.
Well, yeah. So I know you said that you learnt to knit from your grandmother, and that you learnt to weave from sort of like the guild a bit later on. Could you tell us a bit about what it was like to learn from your grandmother, if you
It was a very long time ago because she died when I was 11. But she always had busy hands and she was always knitting or crocheting. And she taught my mother, but I think my grandmother was the better knitter actually. But it was lovely to learn with her because she used to look after us sometimes, and it was just what the 2 of us did together. So it was nice. But then she developed dementia and probably couldn't remember how to knit, but I don't think anybody trusted her with needles and scissors then. So.
What was it like to learn to weave when you were like further on in life?
Yeah, it's a totally different learning journey. The first day I ever did weaving, it was a class for a more advanced technique that I'd been tricked into going to, and the loom was all set up, and it was just explained to me what to do. So, and I did it, and I thought, this is amazing. I can do this from nothing. The learning curve is quite steep for that. You learn things really fast. And then you get your own loom and you realise that actually you know nothing. But I learnt mainly from the books and internet, and I got a few pointers from people. And then I met a professional weaver who had a group in Lostock, and I wouldn't call her a teacher for me, she was more of a mentor. And we used to do residential weekends up in the Ribble Valley once or twice a year, and that was really educational, and I've done a couple of other residential courses as well.
That's really cool. So for any of the weavers watching, what's your sort of like favourite technique or pattern or thing?
My favourite thing is deflected double weave, which is where you have 2 layers or more of cloth that are intermittently above and below, and you can make really cool patterns with that. I'm not very good at designing it, but I'm quite good at copying other people's work.
And your favourite colour is purple?
Purple, yes.
I think Kaya said we should put something somewhere calling you the Purple Lady.
Well, I have been called the Purple Princess in the past.
Oh, That's even better.
Yes, I don't know if you want this bit on record, but I had this, so I've got this really cool gay friend and he loves ballet. And he and 2 of his gay friends and I went to London for the weekend and they were all in black and I had a purple coat. So we were 3 black queens and the purple princess.
And it stuck.
It did,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, actually, that makes me think. I know that you told us before, but the story about how you came to make the
The pride flag.
banner
Yeah.
is really interesting. Would you mind
Not at all.
retelling that? Thank you.
So I've always been very pro-LGBT plus anyway, because where I worked I was surrounded by gay people and I've worked with a couple of trans people in the past. And then about 5 years ago my daughter came out as lesbian. And my friend Jane, who's also a knitter and a guide dog puppy raiser, her daughter is also a lesbian. Jane is the treasurer of the local church. And when we got a new vicar, he made it very clear that he was not supportive of blessing gay marriages, same-sex blessings of any sort, and he didn't want them to happen in his church. I was annoyed by that, even though I'm an atheist. I don't like my kids facing any discrimination, and that very clearly was discrimination to me. And then we were asked to have an exhibition in the church for my knit group. So the first thing that sprang to mind was to knit a very large pride flag, and I called it Pride Not Prejudice. We also yarn bombed Chudley with lots of little flags.
Amazing. Oh, so what does craft mean to you personally, and why is it important to your life?
I think because I've always worked hard, relaxation is vital. And I went through a bit of a Buddhist phase about a decade ago and was meditating a lot. And then I realised that my craft was my meditation, really. So not only did you not get sore hips from sitting in an uncomfortable position, you actually got something out of it at the end. So I find each stitch, you're actually in the moment when you're creating that stitch. And for me, I find it very calming. And if I'm feeling a bit anxious, the best thing to do is to pick up some knitting, simple knitting, not complicated when you're not in the right frame of mind. When I'm happy, I can knit anything, but if I'm feeling a bit anxious, lace or patterned work is not a good thing to turn to.
Yeah. I guess you get, I don't know, maybe you don't get slightly achy hands though.
Yeah, I do, but that's okay. You know, there's got to be a bit of pain to gain, hasn't there?
But do you think it's important for your craft to be continued by other generations?
Oh, absolutely. I think we lose touch with how things are made. Most people don't realise what's gone into the clothes that they wear. And I think if they understood a bit more about preparation of the fibre, manufacturing the cloth, sewing it all together to make what you want to wear, and its environmental implications, I think the throwaway fashion would die. But most people don't, or choose not to know about it. But I actually think it's really important to know what you're doing every time you buy a cheap shirt.
So what do you think are methods that young people can do to sort of like get engaged with crafts?
I think it's a very important part of primary education. But it always seems to get lost in the secondary phase. I mean, in the Faroe Islands and the Aran Islands, they taught everybody to knit at school. And it was so much part of the culture and the heritage. But that's all gone now with the national curriculum. But I think it's a really good way to relax. I mean, children are now taught mindfulness. Well, you know, give them a hammer and nails if they want that, or yarn and needles. And they can get the same mindfulness, but learn a useful skill. So I think it is really important.
Yeah. So I know you've spoken about the project with the church, but are there any other ways to use craft to engage with sort of communities or?
That's a good question. I used to teach knitting in my daughter's school. When she first changed schools, I didn't know any of the other kids, and she'd talk about them. So after some negotiation and a quick DBS check, I was allowed to teach knitting in school. Ironically, at that time, the Children's Hospital was not doing DBS checks on their consultants, so I never had one through the hospital, but I had one through the school. They were all, without exception, absolutely useless at it, but we sewed all of the squares together and we made a blanket for one of the teachers who'd had a stillbirth and then a live birth, and I'd like to think she was touched by it.
Oh, that's really sweet. I bet she probably still has it somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure she does actually. She was a lovely lady.
So, with your craft, do you consider yourself an artist?
I'm certainly not a fine artist, and I do think of myself more as a crafter because I know what I want to make and I make it, but I couldn't paint a picture. I can sew a picture. At a push I could probably weave a picture, but I certainly don't have any fine art skills, and my design skills are much weaker than my physical skills. It is something I find difficult. I've always been very recipe led, but I'm the same with my cooking. I don't just freewheel in the kitchen, you know. I like a recipe to follow, but that's fine if it turns out to be what you want. I don't think that matters, as long as it makes you happy.
If you had to lay out, this is a very hard question, sorry, like the difference between a crafter and an artist, what would you define it as?
I think if it's a career thing, a crafter makes what people will buy, whereas an artist makes what pleases them. That would be how I see it. But because I don't need to sell to support my lifestyle, I make what pleases me. So I suppose that makes me an artist, but I feel like it's a craft.
That's a good answer.
A true artist doesn't paint to order, I don't think. Apart from maybe portrait painters, but perhaps they're crafters.
So, do you have any favourite craft-related memories?
That is a tough one.
It's okay if not.
I don't think I do. I probably do. But
they're all good.
They are, yeah. Yeah, we play a little game at Knit Group, which comes from a Radio 4 programme. There's things that you can say in at young group and in the bedroom, so that's always quite naughty.
Could you give an example?
Yeah, we tried to squeeze my balls. We're naughty. T-shirt.
Where'd you get that?
It's from a shop in Exeter called Lauren Alston Designs.
Ooh.
And the strapline for her yarn is chunky knits for cosy tits.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to get some to wear during the exhibition.
I've got another one with an arrow on it and it says resting stitch face.
So, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Terry. I do a lot of different arts, but I think this one is about punk and my jackets and such like that.
And how long have you been sort of like doing craft things for?
I've always customised things like the backs of jackets. I've been doing that ever since the beginning of secondary school, but I got really into the punk movement and stuff after a breakup a couple of years ago, I think. Like a January couple of years ago, where I just thought to myself, I need a rebrand, basically. I need to reinvent everything, and I fancied something to take my mind off things, and that was what I veered towards.
So, how did you originally get into craft? Like, how did you learn how to do what you do?
So, my gran taught me a bit of sewing, and we had textiles classes back in secondary school, but that wasn't really my thing. A lot of it was machine sewing, and machines stressed me out. You always have that paranoid fear that you're going to run over your fingers. So I started off with hand sewing and watching a YouTube channel called Bernadette Banner, who does historical like sewing and sewing techniques, and most of that is hand sewn. And to see that that's not a limitation, actually. If you don't have a machine, that shouldn't be a limitation. That was always good. I just liked the fact that there was options
if you didn't have a machine or didn't know how to use a machine or didn't want to use a machine because it was loud or what have you.
And so with like your jackets that are going to be on display, because they're very punk, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I learned about punk movement in A-level media studies. We were studying the ska movement and the 80s movement that went against Thatcher, especially when Thatcher described the streets of London being swamped with immigrants, I think, and I think that's extremely relevant today as well. There was a big kind of riot culture, as it were, of punk who would fight against skinheads being, I mean, you don't really see them much today. They probably became Reform UK voters, but he kind of shaved heads, white wife beaters who were very, very anti-immigrant and would storm usually Pakistani communities living on the outskirts of London. So you ended out with the punk movement, who would then go patrol the area to stop skinheads from being there. So it's always been what would be considered today as woke, but it grew up with queer people and everyone who didn't feel like they fit in, and people in marginalised communities, especially people of colour, as much as people of colour also may not have felt like they were able to fight because they were so discriminated against. It was quite a lot of like more privileged communities, as it were, kind of fighting for communities that were less privileged, and I really enjoyed that. I've got privilege as a white person who grew up in a middle class neighbourhood, so the idea of fighting for these communities is kind of how it came about, as well as a very kind of DIY fashion sense, which I really like. There's kind of a lot of emphasis on the imperfection, and anti-fashion deliberately being as not minimalist and not clean and not rich and fancy as you can. You go to hardware stores to pick up screws, you rip the heads off lighters and attach them to your jackets, you print what you want, you take what you want and you rip it up and make it what you want. There's a big DIY culture within punk because it's something that everyone should be able to do, no matter who you are, what your class or race or wealth is. You should be allowed to make what you want as long as you hold those political beliefs.
So, do you think it's important that young people like us and younger are still sort of like continuing with these styles and sort of like learning to craft?
I think so. I think, especially with the emphasis of your exhibition, it's always seen as, it's not an art form, it's a craft, because, I mean, women, but a lot of minorities do it, so it's not as important as the fine arts or what have you, whatever that means, because it's a pretty broad topic. But I think it's important that we keep this going. It's not, again, if the point of it is to be accessible, that anyone can do it, and to find what you love doing, and display with patches the bands you like, the political movements you like, anything you like, it's just a kind of tapestry of the stuff you like, and thus it's your personality on a jacket. I think it's important that young people do that, because especially in today's culture and the rise of conservatism, where you have to be prim and proper and go into business and economics and invest in crypto or whatever, like, I don't want to do that, and I genuinely strongly believe that nobody really wants to do that. That is not interesting and it's not fun. Young people should be allowed to play and create and have fun. And that's what it's all about. You should play and create and have fun. But no matter who you are, not some people should be allowed to play and create and have fun. Everyone should be allowed to. So I think it's important that we remember that we can do whatever we want to do, really.
So, can you think of any good resources, like I know you said about the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
For like helping young people get into craft?
I think a couple of good YouTube channels are Bernadette Banner, who does historical reconstruction, as well as, I think she used to be a costume designer on Broadway, but Rachel Maxey does slightly more casual things, and is very into that kind of Hobbit, cottagecore, rustic aesthetic. Unfortunately, a lot of resources around punk, for whatever reason, are based in the US. So there's a website called Angry Young and Poor, where you can get patches and studs and all sorts. But they don't ship to the UK. I think they used to, but I don't think they do anymore. It is difficult, I'm not going to lie, trying to get your hand on fun resources like studs. Because not many places sell them, and the places that do sell them are like Amazon and AliExpress. I think there's an element of not being kind of Puritan about it, and to not shame others for like, oh, you got your jacket from Shein before you dig it up or whatever. Some people don't have access to things because of where they are. I mean, you know, especially in the southwest. Somebody told me, I'm going to get an Uber. No, you're not. That doesn't exist. And the buses come once every hour. So good luck getting your hands on absolutely anything, because a lot of places don't come, don't ship, don't work here. Especially with the rise of social media, there's been like a very kind of Puritan, it has to be perfect, you have to be perfect in doing this. And it's not going to be, it never is. And it's unrealistic to do so. I think for young people, lowering your expectations and having fun, realising that whatever you see, and I say on social media, that's a stereotypical thing, but just in the media in general, is not accurate to what you experience, and you should do what you want, is such a freeing thing. And to realise that a lot of assumptions you had came from the media, and thus you're wrong. It's such a world-changing realisation, but just to kind of have fun with things is such a good part. Have fun, and have fun with other people as well.
So, I feel like you use craft a lot in a way that's very linked to your identity. Correct me if I'm wrong. Would you like to talk about that at all?
I think it's... I don't know how to explain it. I definitely come from a place of privilege. Again, I grew up in a middle class household. I'm white. I went to a good school. I got a good education, so I'm very privileged in that way. On the other hand, I am queer and trans. I'm disabled. I'm neurodivergent. So you've got fights that I can join in on, both in support of and as a member of. I think it's interesting, you meet a lot of people through doing this, and obviously because you all look the same in this kind of DIY sense, you don't see, like, you might not know, you know? You might not know if somebody's super rich, and you might not know if somebody's super poor, because you all look the same. So I think, yeah, realising the privilege you have and using it to your advantage, to stand up for people who are less advantaged, and to put your foot down, because you will be taken more seriously, unfortunately, than other minorities is a good way forward, but you have to deconstruct that yourself. You have to realise that things like racism is systemic. You have to realise what beliefs you hold that come from systemic racism, that certain communities were built up because of systemic racism, that you have to realise that, deconstruct that, and then go, okay, what can I do to fix it? Not fix it, but what can I do to counter this? What can I do to challenge it?
Yeah.
A big point of punk is the community aspect. Is the fact that, okay, I can't do it by myself, but there's a huge community out there, and also I can spot them from a mile away because they all look like me. So you can round up a bunch of people and go, right, this is what we're going to do, and that was the point of the punk movement in the 80s.
So you said earlier about how you think there's definitely a distinction between art and craft, or like how it's considered two separate things. Do you consider yourself an artist?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, I do. I kind of don't believe in craft. If you look at things that are considered art, and what is considered craft, quite often the art is more painting, sculpting, whereas the craft is everything else. And you'll find things like the everything else are, for example, bead craft, which are prominent in Native American cultures. You've got all sorts of various potteries and stuff. That's considered a craft, and that's prominent in various other cultures. Like, it's all the stuff that's considered craft is a craft because it was from a lower society. Knitting, crochet are seen as more feminine things, so there's no way it can be as uptight as what the men do, right? So there's an art to like mending things and making clothes and stuff, which is just seen as kind of a necessity rather than a skill. And yet you ask somebody who isn't experienced to do it and they wouldn't be able to. I think a lot of it comes from societal prejudice as what is considered an art and what is considered a craft, rather than what you're actually doing. It's who's doing it depends on its prowess, rather than what it actually is. Funny enough, goes back to systemic racism and systemic misogyny. So, again, realising those systems and realising how it seeps into every single bit of society can help you deconstruct these kind of things. And realise that actually a lot of things are an art. I would even go as far as to say things like agriculture is an art. The fact that any skill at all where you make something is an art. You're a carpenter, I'd say that's an art. You're a mechanic, that's an art. Because you are physically doing something with your hands that results in something better than the sum of its parts. Cooking is an art. I think a lot of things can be considered arts that aren't, by definition. It's not just painting, sculpture, drawing. It's not something that's in a sketchbook or like a little weird item on a pedestal. Like, there's more to it than that. And I think you take away that almost pretentiousness that comes with the label of art, and you realise it is for everyone, and it is to have fun, and it is to express yourself. And I think opening it up to as many people as possible and taking away that prestigious title allows people to have fun. And that sounds really cliche, but I think we as a society have kind of forgotten how to have fun and think fun is only for children, and then you become serious when you're an adult. And that's really sad. That's really sad. I think a lot of people working with kids have a great joy in it because you lose a lot of that creativity as you get older. That's so sad. We should do more. It shouldn't all just be kind of numbers and spreadsheets as we grow up. We should be able to have fun with things the way we used to as a kid. I think it's quite healing to be able to have fun.
Have you heard the saying that the best artists are people who are really young or really old because they don't feel like they have anything to lose?
I've never heard that. That's
Yeah. That's what it made me think of.
Yeah, you should. You should kind of stop. I think being neurodivergent helps with that because I'm not massively sure on the social boundaries myself and what is seen as acceptable and normal. So I just gravitate towards what's fun and then roughly judge other people's reactions. And as long as it's not hugely harsh, as long as I'm not streaking in public and getting arrested, then I can go, alright, this is alright. What I do with in my own four walls with a tin of paint is kind of up to me, isn't it?
I know you said that you don't have one, but are there any craft anecdotes that you've had? It's okay if not.
I mean, I've tried to make battle jackets for other people before. That's difficult. Because, again, they're really, really personal. I've had some kind of cruddy ones where I go up to people and compliment them on their battle jacket and they go, thanks. like, oh, okay, Jesus. You get a lot of old women coming up to you. You're going through charity shops and looking for like a shirt you can rip up or something. And I will inevitably get somebody come up and either touch my hair or touch my jacket without permission. And that's jarring, but you just kind of have to get used to it. I will say the joy of it is wearing the stuff that you go out and make. You get a lot of compliments. The people who don't like you won't say anything in Britain. I think that's the culture. But the people who do like it will say stuff that they like it, and it gives you more. I don't think this is the same throughout all cultures at all. I think a lot of people get ridiculed for things, but certainly my experience is that you might get some funny looks from the people who don't like it, but the people who do like it will go out of their way to say so. And that's anyone, and that's everyone, of all ages. I've had some super preppy teenage girls come up to me and tell me that they like my hair, or some really like old men in wheelchairs tell me they like my hair, or random cashiers say they used to have a mohawk back in the 80s and they miss it. And it's just nice. It gives you a point to talk about, and that kind of builds that sense of community. And if one person looks at me and goes, if they can wear that jacket, I can bring mine out the cupboard and also wear it in public, then great, because again, there shouldn't be shame in having a bit of fun at your own expense, you know?
The Hobbycraft exhibition at the NEC had many interesting stands, but what caught my eye was something very different. What exactly was it? I needed to know.
Excuse me, who are you, and what is this strange display here we see at the NEC?
Hello, my name is Alison Murray, and this strange display is called Above and Below the Waves, and it's an amazing installation that people can walk through and experience being under the sea.
How long did this display take to make? How many people were involved in making it?
This particular project actually, amazingly, had 2,000 people help me all over the UK and abroad. And as a project, it actually took 5 months to sew as well.
Alison Murray, her mother, and an abundance of helpful volunteers created this 9 by 6 metres display, and every piece is knitted. On the outside, the roof and sides represent the cliffs and the seashore. Knitted figures and complete scenes have been created by Alison and her volunteers and lovingly placed for all to enjoy. As you walk through, the inside simulates being underwater. Carefully lit, the effect is just perfect.
All right, my name's Mary Hudson. I belong to the Oxford U3A group. West Oxford, indeed. And I've done some miniature things, but you've done fish and...
Betty did seaweed and
seaweed
and coral,
yes.
Yeah.
Mermaids, little mermaids.
How long did it take you?
Well, it depended. It was an ongoing project which we took several months over and did in between doing other things.
This project, as all my projects, I'm obviously personally involved because I'm the mad person to think of them, but with each project I do raise money for charity as well.
Is it just for the lifeboat?
This particular project we're raising for the Train One Save Money campaign for the RNLI.
So how many more projects do you have?
Well, my previous two involved knitting a 30-foot Christmas tree in 2005, which we raised for North Devon Hospice, and in 2008 we completed a giant gingerbread house, which I raised for Great Ormond Street Hospital. To raise money for the projects, I'm often asked to display it in exhibitions as this one here. I've been asked to take it to various different events, and everywhere we take it we're able to raise money.
So you say you're asked to do it.
Yes.
Do they charge you, or is it free?
No, because we are raising money for charity, people are very kind and generous and let us have the space usually.
You have lots of visitors throughout the day, I'm sure, because I mean it's absolutely fascinating. Who in particular enjoys it, do you think?
I think everyone enjoys coming to see Above and Below the Waves, and I'm always happy that as long as people walk away and they're smiling and they're happy, my job is done. I believe everybody finds something that they like, whether it is a tiny little tot or grannies and granddads and husbands and wives. They all comment and say, wow, it's amazing.
Is this the first time you've seen it?
Yes, yeah, first time we've seen this. It's absolutely amazing. And the amount of hours that must have gone into it are incredible, and the detail is superb. Wherever you look, there's something different to see with it. But it's excellent. I'm very impressed.
What's your favourite piece?
I like the rock pool and the little crabs around that.
I'm Kay Whittle and I belong to West Oxford U3A, and the craft group leader who's not here, she was in touch with Alison and brought the idea back to the U3A. So all sorts of members of the U3A have knitted squares and fishes and coral and sea anemones and things, and the turtle, all brought wool in. So it's been a sort of a joint effort from all sorts of members doing bits and pieces.
I mean, do you get offers for things to add to it?
As a project, as a 2-year duration, we've had amazing knitting over those 2 years, but it is likely that, as yesterday, I had a lady bring me a beautiful mermaid, and in Brighton I was presented with a 3-foot turtle. So pieces do still keep coming to me, yeah, definitely.
Is there any one particular thing or a few things on here that's particularly interesting?
I'm very fond of my puffin, who's next to Bill the fisherman, because he was sent to me from Hong Kong by a lovely lady who knew North Devon and is a Lundy puffin. Obviously my mother's beautiful mermaid, Cyrene, always has beautiful attention and people absolutely adore her. But everything, every single shell, every single fish, every single piece of seaweed, all is part of such a beautiful big creation. So I love it all, really.
That's lovely, Alison. Just finally, can you tell me roughly how much you've raised over the years?
Over the years, with all 3 projects, we've probably raised about £45,000. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you. Thank you.
Alison's projects are truly amazing. They not only have been of great benefit to charities, but also have been enjoyed by thousands of visitors.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's lovely, very magical.
So, first of all, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sophie Pettit. I'm a master's student at the University of Exeter, and yeah.
And what master's course are you doing?
It's a research master's in animal behaviour.
That is very cool.
Thank you.
And yeah, we can see your whale shark behind you. Do you get to research any whale sharks?
I don't. I do actual whales instead, but so that's very cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Do you have to do like a lot of like traveling for that?
No, sadly, I'm just doing like desk-based stuff, so I sit and read a lot of things, but it is very cool.
Have you seen a whale like before in real life in the wild?
I have. I did a field trip to Costa Rica with my undergrad degree, and we were like leaving one of the places we'd been staying, and the guys on the boats were like, we're just going to go over here real quick. I'm like, okay. And there was this humpback, and so we got to see that, which was really, really cool.
That is so cool. So is there a lot of time in your schedule for crafting?
Weirdly, yeah. It feels like there shouldn't be, but I kind of go into the lab and do a 9 to 5, and then when I come back I have like all my evenings for whatever I want to do at the time, and I have like a lot of free weekends, so it's a good amount of free time for it.
And would you mind telling us what crafts you do?
to a few. I like to just try random things sometimes. So I love knitting, I love crochet. I've done them for a long time. I used to do them a lot with my mum. And then during COVID, I got really into sewing because I really loved it when I did textiles, and I thought I think I could figure out how to make clothes. And so then, because I had so much time during COVID, I learned how to like follow patterns and do things like that, which was great. And then now I don't have my sewing machine with me, but I still do a lot of knitting and crochet, and I've been getting more used to following large patterns and making bigger things, which is really.
Hello.
Hey.
So, first of all, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Just your name, who you are, where you are.
Sure. My name is Amy Brushhaber. I am Kaya's mom. I'm very proud to be Kaya's mom. She's my firstborn baby. I live in Invergrove Heights, Minnesota, in the United States of America, but formerly have lived in England, in London, and that was amazing.
How long did you live there for?
We lived there for 11 years. That's where Kaya and her sister grew up. And that's where quilts were made.
Yes, we go on to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So what kind of crafting do you do? I know you do a lot of different ones, but what would you say are like your crafts?
Goodness. I love all crafts. I've never been able to get into knit and crochet, however. So anything with string, not really so much. Goodness, I love quilting. That is my latest, greatest pleasure. I love paper craft. I love making cards and scrapbooks and any kind of paper craft, really. Goodness, I like rubber stamps. What else? Anything creative, really.
And how long have you been doing creative things for? Like, were you taught them by your mother or her mother? How did you learn what you're doing?
Yes. I have been being creative just about for as long as I can remember. I loved markers as a kid and coloring and doodles and those kinds of things. So love a bit of creativity. Goodness, quilting, I guess, I don't know. I've been inspired by that for a long time. I went to a high school graduation of one of my students that I had when she was in first grade, and her mom had done a t-shirt quilt. This is before my own children were born. And that really inspired me. And so when my own children were born, then I decided that I was going to save their precious t-shirts and other things. I think there's a piano bag in one of the quilts with someone's name on it. But I decided to save precious things from the time that my children were born in order to just preserve memories, really.
And did your mum do things like that? Did she, I know she did a lot of needlepoint and stuff like that, but did she do crafts at all that sort of documented your childhood or sort of kind of related to you as a young person?
I mean, she did loads and loads of cross stitch because she went to my brother's swim meets and would sit and just do cross stitch at the swim meets for something to pass time. So that was kind of her thing. I did a cross stitch or two in my lifetime, but it's not really my thing. She has preserved some family heritage in cross stitch. She has a piece of wool that was carded. It was given to her by my dad's mother, but it was carded by like my dad's, so probably my great grandparent carded the wool and made a piece of wool. And then my dad's mom handed it to my mom, who did a family kind of heritage cross stitch on it, on that piece of wool. So yes, I'm sorry that that is not on display, unfortunately.
Okay, that's amazing. I didn't know that we had that.
Yeah.
That was a thing. Sounds like a
Yes.
very nice family heirloom.
Yeah. So I mean, I definitely do different craft to my mom.
But do you
Yeah.
feel like it's something that bonds you? You know, you can talk about, she can
Yeah.
help you with your things and you can, yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely feel like I can call her for advice in sewing to go, oh, how do I match these corners? She has sewn more clothing. She sewed my prom dress. She sewed my wedding dress.
She sold my doll clothes. She's sewed my
Yeah, yes. Whereas mine is a little bit more straight stitching or a little bit more completely off the cuff, like the cow quilt that I made for Kedley.
Just
That was completely creative as you go. I didn't have a vision for that, what that was going to be at the end.
So, how did you come to learn doing quilting? I know that that's sort of, I remember it just happening. I feel like I hadn't seen you make a quilt before and then it just happened.
It's just magic. I just magic these things up. No, so the t-shirt quilts were absolutely labor of love. They took years and years and years. So I started saving them from the time that you were born. And I remember you being in kind of early secondary school when I started taking them out of the box. Actually, when we cleaned out the storage unit, that is when I brought them back to the UK. And I started cutting them and backing them with cotton because I had stitched a t-shirt quilt for Dad and I before you were even born. It's the one on our bed, and kind of learned the hard way that that knit t-shirt material stretches, and if it's not backed with cotton, it's going to stretch and just be funny and rip over time.
Yeah.
So I'd learned that the hard way, and so I did back yours with cotton, interfacing and like fusible web iron-on stuff, and cotton. And then that took a long time to cut and back all of them. And then you picked the fabric when we were here in the US for a visit.
Yep.
And then I started, then you kind of have to lay it all out and figure out, okay, these pieces need to be this many centimeters wide or long, or you just kind of lay it out and do the math, really.
And do you remember what it felt like to be done with that and then to give it to me?
It was pretty incredible to be finished with it because it took so long. But also it preserved your whole life, really. And it's like every shirt of those is a memory for me of you. I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. Of you wearing those shirts, and you doing track and you doing ballet and living in London, and all those shirts Grandma Dean sent you that you didn't want to wear. But yeah, every piece of that is a piece of precious memory for me, and I hope it is for you too. And I think, if I remember right, I didn't want you to see it when it was done, and I wrapped it up for Christmas. Is that right?
Do you remember what was special about that Christmas?
I think you had COVID.
Yeah.
And you were stuck in your room.
Yeah. I wanted to give you a hug so bad and I couldn't. So you didn't really have anyone teach you how to quilt?
I did a lot of YouTube. It was kind of just straight line stitching on a sewing machine, which anybody can do, I think. It was just straight lines, and my lines aren't always straight, I will tell you that.
Part of the charm.
Yes, and there's a bit of frustration and piecing and learning to go, oh, these things don't line up. And so you have to just make it work, really.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more thinking creatively, but in a different way, problem solving.
Would you say that, why is crafting important to you? I mean, obviously, partially because it helps preserve memories of your children, but why is it important to you?
I'm a very sentimental person, and to preserve those things to me is really precious, and it helps me to remember. There's definitely some dementia in the family, and I just don't want to forget. I want to remember, and I want you to remember your childhood too. And I hope that, things like a quilt will help you to do that. But, I definitely didn't want, 50 t-shirts sitting around to remember. So repurposing them into something that is usable
Yeah.
is something that floats my boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and for me, crafting is like a stress outlet too. Like you asked about why I craft, and it's definitely an outlet. I enjoy doing it, but I enjoy the finished product too. I made Grandpa a quilt for Christmas that had his wood logo on it, Gramps Garage, and I did it in wood fabric. And yeah, and that one was really fun to do too. And that one, it's preserving a memory of that's his logo and what he loved to do. But it's also something that's usable for him too. That hopefully was a precious gift.
So you like the combination of sentimental preservation and utility and like, yeah.
Yes. And also I think I love gifting people with those kinds of things too.
Yeah.
One for you, one for Ketley, one for Grandpa. I made Grandma G a table runner. So I like giving my things away too.
Do you think then that it's important for younger generations, people my age and Kelly's age, to learn how to do things like that to preserve things for future generations? Would you say that's an important thing?
In my opinion, it's important, but I think people need to do what drives them. Because I can't say to someone, oh, you should do this to preserve memories, because that might not be their thing. I do it because it's my thing. I do think that sewing and quilting is becoming very much a lost art. When you can go to Primark and buy something cheap as chips that will do the job, the same thing, but to me they're not the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's no love in Primark quilts.
Exactly. Primark doesn't save clothes from when you're a baby to when you're an adult, so you've already got a one up on Primark. Do you feel like there's enough resources for young people to either get inspired to do crafts or to actually execute it in terms of like information online or crafting workshops that can be easily accessed by young people?
Yeah, I think younger generations, YouTube is a fount of knowledge on anything and everything that you want. I see that more for young people working than classes. But young people have to be inspired to want to do that too. And again, you can't force someone to do something that they don't really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do think in general there's a lack of, I don't know, creativity is dying, I think. And I think social media plays into that, because people are so, doom scrolling, and that just takes hours and hours and hours of your time. And it's less time that you have for sitting without technology doing something
And do you feel like, say, you and I are crafting in the same room, do you feel like that's something that strengthens a relationship? So if you're quilting and I'm knitting, do you think that creating in the same space is productive for
Yeah.
our relationship?
Yes, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on, I think they were mostly scrapbook retreats. I would go with a bunch of other ladies for a weekend to a camp or a hostel or a place to stay for a bunch of people. And everybody just brings their own things, and it's amazing. You can sit and chat and be inspired and see what other people are doing, and get stuff done too in that sacred time.
And that's great because I feel like a lot of the time artwork, even if you don't think it's artwork, can be used to like support other people or support other communities. Do you ever find that your work or that you are motivated to use your craft to help support communities? I know that you've done like quilts with flags and stuff on them. Have you ever considered doing things like that to support like migrant communities or local sort of immigrants? Have you ever thought about that?
Yes, yes. So I know that there are ladies I think in the US that sew really bright quilts for babies in the NICU. So babies that are have to stay there a long, long time, and they're bright colored and happy quilts. And actually, I have sewn two recently that I go, oh, I don't have a use for these. And so I intend to give them to someone at some point. I just don't know. And they're two very, very different quilts. But yes, I do intend to give those. So a couple of other things. There was one there, I stitched a pillow cover for Hannah Graham when they were expecting Minnie. They were adopting a child from South Africa. And I stitched a pillow cover. It had a South African flag on one side, and it had a G and then a like a number 3, like cubed, on the other side, like they were adding to their family. So Minnie was adopted, but she was an immigrant really to the country. So just to give her a reminder of a piece of something from her homeland. Another way that I supported community with craft was at Beatlesford. So Beatlesford is a school in Kingston for students with complex needs, ages 2 to 19. And I worked in the sixth form there, so students that were 16 to 19 years old, and we were doing a lot of enterprise. And that really fed my creativity for, okay, how can these students make things to sell that people will want to buy, but it's something that those students are able to do with minimal assistance. So we made, one year we made little snowmen out of socks. And we would go and buy white socks, and we would fill them with rice and then tie them to make little snowmen, and then put another little different colored sock on the top for a little hat, and they would glue on the buttons for the face. So we did that. We collected yogurt containers and covered them with denim from jeans, like the leggings of jeans, to make little pencil pots. And I'm trying to think, what else do we do? But that was helping those students achieve something amazing with craft, according to
Sensory experience, isn't it?
yeah. Yes, when they're pouring rice into a sock and they're feeling that. And yeah, absolutely. So it was meeting their needs in a lot of different ways, actually.
Beautiful. It's amazing. There's the big question. Would you consider yourself an artist? And if you don't, why don't you?
I don't think I consider myself an artist. You might think differently. I don't know. When I think of an artist, I think about a sculptor or a painter, and I think about a perfection, something that looks to me like perfection, like you'd see it in a museum and it would be incredible. And I also think about an artist as, oh, look at what they did. I could never do that. So no, I don't think I think of myself as an artist, a crafter, definitely, but not an artist. Um, yeah, I don't know. I also think art is sold for sometimes exorbitant amounts of money, or it's absolutely priceless. You think of like the David statue and how incredible it is, and like priceless, priceless. And I don't think of my things as priceless.
They are though. I think this is one of the things that people have said to us consistently is that they consider art to be a profession and they don't think of themselves as an artist because they're not in that profession and they don't see their work to be of much value. But I think that oftentimes the intent behind the work is far more important and gives it much more value than, say, just like a random painting by Andy Warhol that was produced in a couple of days and then is sold at exuberant prices because art collectors have too much money. And I think that, craft is incredibly important. It's like a cultural cornerstone. It's been done for years. So I think, you know, that preservation is so much more important than, I don't know, just random pieces of art on the wall. And it's equally beautiful, and if not more impressive, because you don't have a studio, you don't have millions of pounds to play around with materials. You just make what you want to make with what
Right.
you have.
Well, and I think hundreds of years ago, craft was done out of necessity. People had to sew their own clothes. You couldn't go to the store and buy clothing. You had to make it, and people grow. But yeah, now with just the industrial revolution and the way that things are produced so cheaply in the world and mass produced and not well produced necessarily, it has made craft become a bit of a lost art.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to ask you about the commission that we did. Can you tell me a little bit about how you approached it and why it's meaningful to you and sort of, why it was important to you to make something that
So when Grandpa George died, we were going through his closet and choosing pieces that we wanted to save. And people each kind of chose a tie if they wanted. And I chose to take all of the rest of the ties that were left for the purpose of craft and preservation. And they have moved across the ocean with me safely twice. And this was just an amazing opportunity to get them out and to be inspired by them and to produce something. And so I chose to produce two different things. One was a cushion cover with ties on the front that look like a flower. And so I ended up kind of really deconstructing the ties to do that. And they are, again, fusible webbing ironed onto that fabric and then stitched. But yeah, I just think flowers make me happy anyways. And so to put ties together and have them be in a flower shape, and to preserve the memories, to go, oh, Grandpa George wore every single one of those. It's precious. It's far from perfect. It's not perfect. I look at it and I see the flaws in it. I see, oh, it's not symmetrical here, and this one is too far up or down from the other one. I also left in a mistake on purpose. So I hate sewing zips into anything. Hate sewing zips. And so on the front of the pillow, not on the back, there is a pucker along the zip. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, I could rip the whole thing out and redo it, but I'm also working on putting aside perfectionism and going, ah, it's okay. It's okay. And so I left that in on purpose, just as a tribute to my putting aside perfectionism. So, and then also with the love of flowers. So this was a lot of Pinterest and a lot of YouTube, not an exorbitant amount, but enough to be inspired. So I also made at least a dozen, there might be 13, 14 roses out of those ties. And those were incredibly fun. And I love that they are all different. Like it's like the flowers that God makes from his hands, because they're all unique and different, like a fingerprint, really. And so those I could stitch while watching a movie or TV or whatever. They were fairly mindless to stitch. It's just kind of rolling it around and securing it and making sure that it's secure so it'll stay and not unravel. But yeah, they're unique and individual, and yeah, I hope they remind Grandpa George, and I hope that you use them someday when you get married for boutonnieres on the men's nose, whatever. I just think that would be a really nice tribute to Grandpa.
They remind me of Grandma too, because she always said to me, when I die, I want you to have a single red rose on the piano to represent me. And they remind me of her, because I feel like while Grandpa was, very well-dressed man, a lot of it was probably Grandma picking it out for him.
Of course it was Grandma.
So it reminds me of that.
Yes. Yes.
The last official question that I have is, do you have a favorite craft-related memory? So, bonding with someone over learning a craft, or giving someone a gift that particularly resonated with you and changed sort of the way that you look at it for the better?
Change the way I look at crafting?
It doesn't have to be that. It could just be giving someone a gift and it, really make you feel good.
I mean, I think my biggest gifts that I've given have been those t-shirt quilts and labor of love, really. And I think that I don't know, I saw you appreciate them, but I think you will appreciate them even more 15 years from now. So I did those kind of for your finishing secondary school, going off to uni, and in my head, you were both going to take them with you and have them on your bed at uni, and you both wanted new bedding, and that's fine. That I was content with that. But yeah, I think those were the most special to give, because they took so long to make, but because of all the memory that is precious for me in them too.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. That's
yeah,
really beautiful.
I think those were the things that I think that I'm the most proud of, that took the longest, that I have given to my children. So, yeah, it's amazing.
So yes, I'm Tricia Zakreski. I'm a associate professor of Victorian literature and culture in the English department at the University of Exeter. And I worked on a project that was called The Art of Fiction, Women Writers in the Decorative Arts. So it's part of a larger project that I've been doing primarily about Victorian women writers and how they represented craft in their writing. But as part of that, I did want to think about how these ideas that have their start in the 19th century, not their start, but are very prevalent in the 19th century, how they have continued through to today. And have they? Do people still think about their work in the same way that they did in the 19th century in the contemporary art and craft world? And I mean, one of the things that I did find is that yes, there's very little that has changed from the 19th century to now about the way people think about women's craft work. It is maybe taken a bit more seriously now by things like museums than it was back in the 19th century. But one of the things that does start to happen in the 19th century is the idea that that craft work could be a form of art and a form of artistic expression, particularly for women in the period. So that's the project. The project was to do the historical research and to write a book about it. And then one of the things I wanted to do is try to get as many people involved as possible. So we put out a call for contributions, just like you guys did on Instagram. And we got about 100 patches sent to us from around the world, and mostly from Devon, but also from places like Pakistan, the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, India, Greece, France, the USA. I think that's all I can think of at the time. So I was both. Yeah, I was a bit surprised that the people who took an interest, that people really did take an interest, and really put a lot of effort into making these things, and then just sent them off in the post like, here you go. The generosity of it I thought was amazing. And so we collected the patches, and as I said, I put them in a box, got on the train to Bristol. Met Ruth and just handed her 3 boxes of patches, and I said, here you go. And then just left it up to her what she did with it.
Amazing. Yeah, do you think the sort of ways that people view women's craft has changed in the time period that you've been studying to now?
Well, I can say a bit more about it.
Yes, please. That'd be great.
So I think one of the things that happens in the 19th century with women's craft is that it becomes part of a discourse around the domestic arts and the decorative arts. So that's what my book is about. It's called Women Writers in the Decorative Arts, Victorian Women Writers in the Decorative Arts. And the argument of the book is that we have this idea of creativity, right? Creativity is the general idea we have of creativity is that there's some genius out there who kind of comes up with something out of nothing and then puts that thing on paper or on canvas or sculpt something with it, and they're an individual who works from their own kind of imagination. But that is a very masculine idea of how things are made, who a maker is. Women tend to work much more with materials they had in the 19th century. They tended to work much more with materials that they had at hand. And they didn't have training in art in the same way that men did. They couldn't get into the main art schools like the Royal Academy. But what they all did learn was how to sew. That was just part of your education as a woman in the 19th century. Whether you were working class, middle class, upper class, you learned to sew. And then also a lot of women, because particularly in the middle classes and above, you weren't expected to work. Like, it was a sign of the success of your family if you didn't work. So you have all of these women sitting around basically bored. Like, they are actually bored. And there's articles that are published, like, where they're just like, I'm so bored, what do I do with my time? And they talk about things like, killing father time with needles and things like that. So you sew just to pass the time. So so it was okay for you to spend your time sewing or making decorative objects for your household, because then you're kind of engaging in maintaining the status of your household. But you shouldn't be on the floor, like mopping the floors or cooking or anything that's actual labor. So these kind of middle class women who don't have access to this kind of standard training that men might get, but do have these kind of domestic skills and the domestic art skills, take those things that they've learned for craft, and then they kind of make art with it, because that's what they know. But the argument of the book also is that then Victorian women writers who think of themselves as not as geniuses, creating great literature, but just writing books for people to enjoy about the lives of women, domestic novels, use the decorative arts and craft as a way of thinking about their writing as a form of artwork that isn't high art, like oil paintings or sculptures, but yet is still a kind of domestic art, everyday art. So it's kind of like the domestic, the feminine, and the everyday. So I think that is one of the reasons why you get discourses over the course of the second half of the 19th century that really start to think about craft as art. One of the reasons. And then women's artwork that is kind of based in this feminine, everyday craft methods. So that's what the book is about. And then I guess the question of whether or not I get it's still the same. I think it's astonishingly still the same. That it's one of the things I was shocked about is it was really how little things have changed in the way that people think particularly things like patchwork or needle crafts of various kinds, or generally textile crafts in general, which they do tend to think about them firstly as sort of stuff that women do, and stuff that isn't really real art. So yeah, I think little has changed.
So it sounds like in the 19th century, a big part of who was making crafts there was like a class relationship there. Do you think that translates today, or is it not really the...
So it's a really interesting question. It's not one I've ever really thought about. I have to say, I find the British class system, even after 30 years living in this country, really difficult. So I don't really quite know. I'm not sure I can...
Are you American?
I am, yeah.
You are the third American in the last 3 weeks to say that to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's okay.
No, I'm thinking it's a really interesting question. I think one of the things about craft, or particularly needle crafts and textile crafts, is that they take a lot of time. I worked with my students in the past, and sometimes I give them Victorian handicraft instructions, and I say, follow these. This is, as just a part of an MA class I used to do on Victorian material culture. Like, pick a set of craft instructions and make something from them, and then do a presentation on it. And I'm like, and tell us what you've learned about making crafts. And they all say, it takes so long to do it. It's like so much, you have to invest so much time and materials, right? It's like that, it's not, some of them would go and, you know, we would do like shell boxes or something. That's a piece that I'll show you. One of my students made.
Oh wow!
So that's called potachominy. So you cut these pictures out, and then you glue them to the inside, and then you put paint in, and you roll it around, and it makes it look like Japanese sort of porcelain, but it's just a plain glass vase with paint in it. So anyway, but she had to buy the vase, she had to buy the pictures, she had to buy the paint. So it can be quite expensive as well. You can do it from found materials, like shells, which is what a lot of Victorian women did, you know, things that they found in nature, leaves or pieces of paper that you can roll up. It is called quilling. I think the reason why working class women probably didn't engage in craft making in the 19th century is because they just didn't have the time, as well as the money, but mostly the time. And it is really about, I think a lot of it is about time. Whether that is an issue for, in terms of class now, I don't think I can say.
I guess there is the stereotype of like retired people are the people that are engaging mostly with craft. And I guess time.
You know, housewives or, you know, mothers, people who have a lot of time on their hands.
So with this, am I right in thinking you have an interest in banners specifically and the history of banners?
No, that was all Ruth.
Oh.
Ruth was the one who came up with the banner. When I brought the and I you'd have to ask Ruth if this was the case, but when I brought the patches up to her in Bristol, we were walking back to the train station and we had to stop because there was a protest march about Palestine going across the street in front of us, so we had to wait for them to pass before we could cross to get to the train station. And I think that might have inspired her to the kind of idea of the protest. I don't know if you know that it was the suffrage, you know about the suffragette movement. So they did a lot of neat, you know, patchwork or just kind of embroidery banners, and I think that's what probably that's what inspired her.
That somewhere, yeah.
But yes, definitely the suffragettes. But I think she might have been inspired in that moment by that march, that Palestine march.
Well, I guess banners are timeless.
Yes. And they, you know, they have this long association through the suffragettes with women's creativity. So I think that's probably what she would say. Yes.
So with these patches, they all have very detailed stories, and people spent a lot of time on them. In what ways, through the anecdotes that people have provided to you, do you think craft affects people's lives?
I think one of the things about the stories that we got primarily in relation to craft is the community, the sense of community that comes along with it. There was a lot of stories that we got which were about mothers, grandmothers, you know, mothers and daughters, and grandmothers, and that sense of sort of a continuity down a female tradition. So that was one way. So, but also they often talked about getting together to make stuff. And we have a couple of patches. I mean, I could show you.
Yeah.
So let's see. I don't want to. It's been a while since because I did this last year. So now I'm thinking, God, I don't want to.
This one and this one are quite similar.
So this one, the story of this one is this woman, when she was young, she wanted to make a patchwork quilt for her parents for Christmas, and she cut out all the squares. And she never finished it. So, and then 60 years went by.
Wow.
And she dug it out of her drawer and she did that patch for us. So she kept all these patches for 60 years in order but the idea was to make the gift for her parents. But this woman, and there's a whole bunch of them, they're part of a group that meets the last Wednesday of every month, which is called We Wednesday. And there are a group of women who get together. I mean, men are absolutely allowed, but they don't tend to come. They get together the last Wednesday of every month, and they just stitch together. There was, I think it's this one, where the group, it was made by like 5 different people. They are a group, and they each put in a patch. They each stitched it together. This is our only patch made by a man. And the story is that goes along with it is that it was inspired by, he's a musician, a trumpet player, and he was inspired by a female composer, a friend of his, and for him the colors represent the gold is the trumpet, the silver is kind of the way her music makes him feel. So it's all inspired by her music. This one you can lift it up.
Oh wow.
And she's written sort of the women who have inspired her. This is this was sent by a woman in India, and she's sitting there thinking, and then the little stitches are her thoughts as they kind of go out into the world. I love all the I just love the stories that go along with the patches. And this one, there's 3. She sent in 3 different patches. This was made by her grandmother, and then she made where'd they go? This one, it was a woman who she had this piece of fabric which had been sitting in the drawer and folded up for like 30 years, and so this was what was on top and that was on the bottom, and she sort of took one that was all faded and one that was new, and she stitched them together. Oh, this one. This was a woman, she dyed each of these herself, and then and she worked with her mother-in-law who was ill, and so they did it together, and she dyed each of them using natural sort of dyes, and then she sewed them together. But I think that that idea of the kind of community collaboration and stitching together, that one I like as well. So I don't know if you can see them.
Oh yeah, this is.
It's called So if you look at it, you can see it. On this side it says "Save Me," and that side it says "I'm fine." So it was designed for a mental health awareness program about how people so often will say they're fine, but actually they need help, or they just can't say. So that is from a woman who she's the granddaughter, I think, of Sarah Hennell, who was a friend of George Eliot. So that's a kind of her maybe great grandmother, like an ancestor. I don't know if you know who George Eliot is. She's a Victorian novelist. Her most famous work was Middlemarch, and Sarah Hennell was friends with George Eliot, and then this, and that is so that was inspired by her. By Sarah Hennell, and then her relationship with George Eliot.
Is there like hair in it?
Yeah, well, I think it is. Although I'm not sure that I'd have to check her story again and see if it's actual hair. But we do have a piece of actual hair. This I don't know if you can see it. There's like a couple of strands of.
Oh yeah.
And that was the woman, the hair, she's like a local sort of witch or something. Again, I'd have to look. I'd have to find it again. But the hair was buried and then dug up.
Wow.
But I can find, if there's any of these that you would like to, I can find the story, and then so you were asking about the other one that I would point to is this one, where she says, after life-changing injuries, I joined a quilting class, best medicine. So the idea that for people who are suffering from, illness of various kinds or loneliness, like this kind of work gives them a community, gives them, people to engage with.
I think people will want to ask about this.
So she did her master's degree in sort of making this material. So these are all on the website if you explore the patches. So that's the patch. So we did front and back. We did pictures front and back. And that tells you, as an experienced architect, associate lecturer, and designer, maker of concept jewelry and handheld objects, I have been creating uniquely expressive statement pieces exploring materiality for a number of years. However, it's only the last 5 years that I began to understand that a major driving force for my creativity is my thirst for knowledge. Recognizing this has led me to explore the potential for design as a research tool, undertaking practice as research PhD at the University of West of England. This patchwork represents my PhD project Ply Cloud, which explores the potential of thin plywood as a sustainable material for making, combining craft practices with digital making techniques. I'm pushing the material to its limits and exploring its material affordance. By means of craft-based creative inquiry and research by design, can the exploration of novel material affordances uncover new opportunities for the use of thin plywood. And then she goes on to talk a bit more about plywood, but yeah, it's all on the website so people can go look at it.
That's so cool that all these people who have submitted have such different lives. And I'm assuming most of them probably have never met each other in person, but
a lot of them haven't, no. But then there was moments of really where people knew each other and I didn't know it when their patches came in. So that one there, laburnum, and then that there. There's I think 4 that was sent by her. She lives in the Philippines, but her sister sent that one. She lives in Pakistan. She sent 3. I didn't know they were sisters until I got in touch with. Do you know Michelle Hussein, the BBC newsreader? She was BBC News. She was on the Today program, BBC Today program. She published a book called Broken Threads. Yes, My Family from Empire to Independence. And she starts. Tells the story of her family history in India. Well, what is now India and Pakistan before the partition that happens after World War II, and her family grew up in her grandparents. They had to make the decision when partition happened. Are they going to stay in India or were they going to go to Pakistan, because they were Muslims living in kind of the Indian part at the time. And so she starts the story. She's kind of led to look into her family history by a piece of sari that's sent to her from a cousin. So when she I read the book, I'm like, it'd be great to get her to come down and talk about this as part of our kind of final project event. And I wrote to her agent thinking she's going to ignore me, but she wrote back. She's like, oh yeah, I'd be interested. And I'm like, why? But it turns out that those patches are from her cousins.
Wow.
Well, isn't it a small world? So yeah, she wanted to come see it, to see the work that her cousins had done and sent from Pakistan and the Philippines. But yes, that one and that one, which use cyanotype methods. But the other one of the things that we did with our second academic workshop, so we gave people cloth, needle, thread, beads, all sorts of things that they can create with. And for the first day, we had them work on a patch, and then we had them swap, pick up a different one on the second. So, like that one up there, take up space. So on the first one, somebody did the did the take up space, and then the next day somebody added the frill to it to take up more space with the beads. So that was kind of cool to let people cut, because they did. Like this one here is somebody had made this patch, somebody else had made this patch, and then the next, when they swapped, they cut it in half and then they stitched two together, and then the companion one is over there. So letting them kind of add to, cut up, rearrange what other people had done. That was fun. But that, you know, a big part of the project and a big part of the book and the research is about collaborative ways of making, and that kind of creativity, which isn't about the individual, but which is about the group, how groups make. And one of the things that Ruth wanted to reflect, like that's why she wanted to make sure that it wasn't, because patchworks will often, like the design of patchworks are often about having a center and then working out from the center, but she didn't want to put any one. And that was one of the pieces of advice that somebody who was a patchworker said to her, you know, get your center and work out. But she didn't want to put any one thing at the center, because you put it at the center, that makes it the most important thing. So that's why one of the reasons why she kind of did the design based on color. Because it's kind of the idea of getting rid of the hierarchy, any kind of hierarchy. The other thing about, you know, the kind of the hierarchy of making, or one of the things that was really important to the project was the idea of storytelling. So we wanted the stories, but also the idea with stories, you know, they tend to be linear, you know, but the idea with this is that it kind of breaks that idea of the linearity of things, which again kind of establishes a hierarchy, because you can read it right to left like you would read a book, but you can read that one, and because the patches that tell the same story or tell a story aren't necessarily next to each other, you're kind of forced to read across and to put together things that you wouldn't think about putting together. Like these two, you know, this woman sent this from India, this woman is from like the north somewhere, and they're both in a way about the relationship between stitching and mental health. But you wouldn't necessarily think about them that way unless you thought about them next to each other.
I guess in that way, your coat really goes against like what you were saying at the start about this idea of like the lone male genius.
Yes, that is a huge, that really important part of the project. That it's a kind of it is definitely a type of creativity, which is not what we normally think of as creativity, or at least not what we privilege as the most important type of creativity. When we make, we don't think about the ways in which people make things together enough. Because there's very little times when somebody just makes something out of nothing, you know, they're always relying on somebody else some way. You know, these great Victorian male painters whose wives probably mixed their paints for them, or, you know, at least kind of cleaned up after them or whatever they did, that nobody ever works alone. But yet this is the image that we have, is that great artists work alone, but that's not true.
One of the questions we had was, what would you like younger generations who maybe aren't engaging in craft because it's sort of like a bit of a dying art form to take away from the project? Like the social aspect.
Yeah, I think that is what the idea of, it feels a bit cliche to say it, right? But we live in a culture that is very much individuals and their phones, or, you know, that they tend not to, and particularly post-COVID. I mean, we do actually see this post-COVID, that people don't gather in spaces in the same way, and there is a bit of it, like it's very slow kind of work. It's work that you you need to kind of give time to, and it would be nice if people could get together more and make things together more. I think that would be a thing I wouldn't mind seeing. I don't know. I don't have any. I feel like I should have something profound to say, and I don't.
That was very profound. So, I think you mentioned somewhere that the classification of what is art and what is craft is dictated by, or like at least in the Victorian period, was dictated by certain social groups. Do you think that's still the same? Like in, I guess, the art sphere especially, like where the line is?
I think that the line between what is art and what is craft is often a discursive line, and one that is based on, well, materials. Like, what material are you working in? What medium are you working in? But also kind of how you present it. That it's, if you think you're making art, I think you are making art. Yeah. I think that people say I'm an artist, or you could say I'm a craftsperson, and a lot of it is about self-identification. But then there's the institutional kind of barriers, maybe you might say, like who displays things. How is it displayed? Is it taken seriously? Do people pay for it? Are there courses that train people in it? All these sorts of things that are the institutional barriers or the pathways to people taking something seriously or not taking it seriously. And I think sometimes with craft, that you have to have people who are just very dedicated, because there isn't a lot of money in it, and they do it because they love it, and they pass down their knowledge in a generous way, because you can't make a lot of money teaching it or doing anything, so they just teach each other. That answers your question or not.
It does, sorry. I guess talking about how craft is taught and passed down, and the sort of matrilineal line, a lot of younger people that we've talked to have said that they haven't been taught craft by their parents or grandparents, and they've started learning off of YouTube as the primary thing, because people don't think to teach it anymore.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's something lost through that?
Lost through them learning it off YouTube?
Yeah.
I mean, I think YouTube is amazing in that they can learn it, because it is concerning when a generation, you kind of lose a generation who knows the skills. But if you can learn it off of YouTube, I think there's something lost in learning it off YouTube, off of learning it off your mother. Honestly, no. In terms of the craft, its skills. I mean, in terms of kind of your emotional connection to it would be different. Not necessarily, I don't think, better or worse, just different. Is there something, but I guess there probably is something lost in terms of that idea of a kind of family history that has often been a part of particularly textile crafts and particularly patchwork. In the 19th century, patchwork was often thought of as a record of women's lives, because you made patchworks out of the material you have around the house. And so there's lots of stories in the 19th century about patchworks where she's the kind of mother tells the daughter, oh, that's the dress I wore when I got married, that kind of sense of the history of maybe a family, and particularly women's lives and women's stories, which patchwork tended to supposedly encode. But you're getting, if you kind of learn off of YouTube from somebody in India, I mean, the global stories and the global connections, I think you lose some things and you gain other things. I've been, watching people making sort of pottery in China and things like that, which is just like amazing that I can watch this on YouTube. So yeah, I think it's pluses and minuses to everything, isn't there?
Sorry, that was a really mean question. I just think it's really sweet that there are older people out there who are learning to use YouTube so that they can make tutorials.
I would want to say that this isn't really about me. You know, very, like I said, I did that and that's it. I'm kind of one, you know, this is a combination of everyone who put effort into these patches and sent them in, and then Ruth who put it together. I feel like I did very little. So I think, you know, I would want to be really, you know, to be thought of as a collaborative piece made by many different people who put in, I mean, it just astonishes me, like the creativity, the interest, the skill, the dedication that people would take the time to respond to my call and send something from Australia. It's incredible to me. I think it's amazing.